Hello, everybody. Welcome into our latest live broadcast. Today it is the 16th of August, 2024. My name is CareyHolzman, and thank you guys so much for tuning in. Today we've got a review of the Synology DiskStation 923 Plus, and we're going to talk about that in great detail today and demonstrate the initial setup and configuration, as well as continue this into a part 2 video with regards to network performance and why that may or may not matter to you. So this will be part 1 of a 2-part series. But first, let me say hello to everybody joining us out there in the chat room. Thanks, you guys, for hanging out with us. Thanks to all the members. Eugene Ildago saying hello. I see Dustin Fuller and David Graham and Mark Baggett. Alan Lindos contributes $7.77 in Super Chat. And Alan says, hello, Carey, Mar, and chat. Happy Friday. I'm catching it live for a change. Right on. William Bird and Gerhard Hoff are saying hello. There's Doman 2000. Essential Working Too Hard says hello. Jose Lopez with a $2 super chat says hello, Carey and Mara and chat. Happy one less Friday. Right? Of course, Marlene is there in the chat room. She's the one doing all the hard lifting in the background there, taking care of administrative work and answering emails and working with potential review opportunities and sponsorship opportunities. They're few and far between on that because of my restrictions, but she gets to sift through all of them. Lucky her. There's Zach Bischoff saying hello. Luke Greenia joining us from Vermont. Terry says good afternoon. Welcome in, Terry. Chris Johnson. Oystein joining us from Norway says hello. Welcome in, Oystein. Peter Lycock, now a member for 27 months, joins us from Scotland. He says, good evening. Hello, Carey and Marlena and everyone in the chat. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland, where the temperature in Edinburgh is 59 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 15 degrees Celsius. And a 10-pound super chat from our friend Peter Laycock, or Buster as we call him. It's his birthday, August 29th, but I figured from now until August 29th, when you see Buster, when you see Peter Laycock in the chat room, shout him out a happy birthday for the next 2 weeks. Let him have a 2-week-long birthday is what I'm saying. So happy birthday to Peter Lycock, even though his birthday is not till the end of the month. Because I screwed up yesterday and now I'm trying to improvise and turn it into something. I think it'll be fun. So thank you, Peter. Thank you, Buster. Roteva 2 says greetings from Missouri. Nick Poverman saying hello. There's Ron Barnish and Dan Nilsson and Richard DeFries and Mark Gaines all saying hello. I see Paul O'Brien and Scott and Charles Purdy, Zvi Manor, Randy Roblowski, El Perez, Sampaio Kuosma says hello. Joe Martin saying hello. Tim Davern saying hello. Victor Val says hello. I hope I haven't left anybody out. John Aleph saying hello. Richard Geicher says good evening all. And I hope I didn't miss you. If I did, it wasn't on purpose. I'm not snubbing anybody on purpose. We are live and I try and go through it very quickly, and we could spend all day just shouting out people's names, or we can get on with the content. So I hope you understand. Now, when we talk about Synology, let's get some of what I anticipate is the most common misunderstanding, which is the model numbers of the Synology reflect the year they came out. So this is a 923 plus, so you would indicate or assume or infer, I'll find a word, that 23 was the year it came out, 2023. But didn't I just do a review on a Synology 224? That would have been the year 2024. So why are we moving backwards? This is a 923 plus. The little plus symbol at the end of the name, they only come out with those about every 2 to 3 years. So you could get a 923 plus versus, say, I don't know, is there a 923? I know they did that with several models where you had the non-plus version and the plus version. Other models, like the 224, won't have a plus version. So the plus version is like the enhanced model, which may or may not be of great interest to you. right? Depending on how you use the NAS or how you want to use the NAS. When Synology introduced the ability to take the two LAN ports on the back of many of their NASs and combine them so you could have double the speed without doing anything but changing a setting in the Synology and running that extra cable. No other configuration is necessary, utilizing something called SMB3 multi-channel. The only Synology units that supported that were the Plus models, regardless if you had the two network ports or not. This Synology model also has the ability for us to add, do I have it up here? Should be here somewhere. A plug-in 10 gigabit Ethernet card. So remember, my complaint with Synology all along has been they're all 1 gig. Everybody else, all of Synology's competitors on the consumer side of things are offering 2.5 gig networking. Now, initially, I didn't care about 2.5 gig networking because it was too expensive. I'd have to get a new switch. I'd have to get a compatible router. Motherboards have been coming with 2.5 gig networking standard now. The high-end switches are now coming with 2.5 gig networking standard now. And home NASs are coming with 2.5 gig standard networking now, except for Synology. So we talked to Synology about this and we explained, the Synology has a wide range of products for businesses and home use. And they can cost several $1,000s on the business side easily. And on the home side, you could spend as little as $300 or $200 and as much as $2,000 on the home side with Synology. So I would want to get 2.5 gig, to get the best out of it, assuming I have a 2.5 gig capable router or switch and a 2.5 gig capable PC. Now that doesn't make my internet any faster, but I'm moving files, big video files, to my network attached storage, to my Synology. And when those files are as big as they are, we do 2 and 3 hour live videos here fairly regularly. Those videos are easily hovering around 10 gigs each. So if I want to edit that, I don't use this computer. This is just for streaming purposes. I don't work on this. This turns on to prepare for a live stream. This is the computer that's streaming this video to you now. And when this video is over, that computer goes off. But first I have to take the file off of it that we record while we're live, move it to the NAS. Now, depending on if I'm moving 1 or if I'm moving 10, at 1 gigabit per second at the speed of the Synology, it takes a bit longer. At 2.5 gig, it takes about half the time. And at 10 gig, in theory, it should be around 9 times faster. So, not 9 times faster than 1 gig. The reason you'd say, well, wouldn't it be 10 times faster? Well, there is something called error correction and parity checking that takes up some of the bandwidth. So in theory, and we can test this in part 2, we move about 120 megabytes per second on a 1 gig network, about 240 on a 2.5. Then there's 5 gig networking, but good luck finding a 5 gig switch. As far as I know, they don't exist. And then 5 gig network cards that you could plug into your computer. I think Amazon sells 2 of them. That's it. Then you jump to 10 gig. Now, if you get a 10 gig switch, that will automatically communicate with anything slower, including 5, 2.5, 1, and 100. So if you have older equipment or for whatever reason, a computer's not that important to you that you need data transfer that fast, it's not like everything has to be at 10. And you only need Cat6A cabling for 10 gig networking. My point is now 10 gig networking, well, it's still a bit pricey by today's standards, is more along the price 1 gig networking was when it first came out, which makes it affordable. 10 gig network switches can be had now for about $200. And then if you want to add 10 gig networking to your computer, you can add a network card for under $100. And then you've already probably got a Cat6A cable. And now if you can put a 10 gig NAS in, that means all the data transfer to and from the NAS, even if you only did one computer on your network at 10 gig. Like for me, I would want two computers on my network at 10 gig. I'd want the streaming computer at 10 gig to a 10 gig switch, because my router, I don't know if my router would support two 10 gig ports at the same time. So I just buy a 10 gig switch and plug that into the router. Then I'd plug the Synology into the switch, and the two computers I also run at 10 gig into the switch. So those three devices can communicate with themselves much faster because they're connected to the switch. And then when I go out to the internet, I'm back to my router and my cable modem, which we're not affecting the speeds of those at all. So this doesn't help you if you're not moving large files in the building you're in, the house or the structure. You can understand why this has more business use, right? But there are people out there that, for one reason or another, they have hobbies or interests in moving large files on a regular basis, and like to have the latest and greatest. They can afford it. They think it's fun. 10 gig is the way to go. Now, I've barely even used my 2.5 gig, and the performance difference is, it's okay. Don't get me wrong. It's not, if something took a minute for me to copy over the network and now I can do it in 30 seconds, great. But it's not like 30 seconds makes or breaks my day. And if I was using a Synology NAS, regardless of the 2.5 gig network card or the 2.5 gig network switch, if the Synology can only move it at 1 gig in each direction, well, that's going to be how long it's going to take. No matter how fast my car is, I can't go any faster than the car in front of me. So this is all relatively simple, but as it applies to moving files within the building, that's it. The minute we got to go out to the internet, we're not changing anything. Speed of the internet, that's the slow car in front of you, all right? You got to call your internet service provider if you want that to go faster. So today, with that in mind, the goal is to take the Synology out of the box. We've never had it unboxed before. Synology was kind enough to send us their certified drives. Some companies require certified hard drives. Certified hard drives cost more. And let me bring up to the camera what they sent us. We've got the 923 Plus. Synology was gracious enough to send us, along with the 10 gig add-in card. That's like an extra $100. Then we've got the 8 terabyte Synology mechanical drives. And we're going to configure all 4 of these. We'll install and configure them as we have before in a RAID 5. Set up our share. We'll install the 10 gig network card. And then we're not going to use the built-in, once we install the 10 gig card, we won't use the built-in network anymore. We won't need that. We'll use the upgrade. Because we don't take the other ones out. They're still going to stay there. We're just not going to use them. That'll probably wrap up today's video for as long as that takes. In fact, it may need to verify the array for the next 24 hours during the initial setup. So in the following video, then we'll run some speed tests, and we'll move some big video files I've got here of past broadcasts. And we'll move them from the streamer through the 10 gig switch. And the 10 gig switch we've got, and again, we'll get more into this in detail later. The TP-Link had one on sale at Amazon. And every one of those ports is 10 gig, and it will automatically switch down to every slower speed network available. So again, that's 5, 2.5, 1, and 100. And you can mix and match as you need. And to make the streamer be able to connect to 10 gig, I need to add a 10 gig network card. So again, we went with TP-Link, the best, what I think the best product at the best price. And these 2 items were purchased using membership contributions as well as your Super Chat contributions. TP-Link we have no affiliation with them. We'd like to, but we don't. So we won't open those today. Those will be for next time. That'll be for part 2. And again, just as a reminder, we leave all of our networking equipment alone. All we're doing is we're going to plug the streaming computer into the switch, the NAS into that same 10 gig switch, and then the 10 gig switch will plug into the back of the router. It's that easy. So right now, this computer's plugged into the back of the router. I'm going to unplug it from the back of the router, plug it in the switch, plug the switch into the back of the router. If that's confusing to you, think of a surge protector. You want your TV on the surge protector, so you unplug your TV from the wall, you plug your TV into the surge protector, you plug the surge protector into the wall, and anything else you want protected, you plug into whatever remaining plugs you have. It's the same concept, only with higher speed networking instead of power. That's all it is. It's very, very simple once you understand the concept. So my goal here is to try and use plain English for you to understand the technical side of things and the reasoning why some people would find this invaluable and other people would find it completely worthless, depending on how you use your computer and what your needs are. We're all different. Let's see what he says. Raystar Man with the $10 super chat says, hello, been a while since I was on live. Well, welcome back, Raystar Man. Good to see you. Oystein's saying it's $200 in Norway. I know Norway's an expensive place to live. That's what I've heard. Andy wants to know if that's a managed switch. No, I have no interest in using a managed switch. I see no benefit to creating a VLAN. I don't see the point of it. Neither myself nor my customer. One customer has a managed switch and they don't know the login or password for it. And since we don't know why it's there, I'm afraid to remove it and find out, because then what I have to do is I have to completely reset the switch, factory reset it, so I can set the name and password back up. And then I have to put it back how it was, but I don't know how it is to put it back to. It's going to be a mess. No managed switches. I like to keep things simple. Now, Mauer, on the other hand, different story. Jake wants to know if we're planning to add some NVMe drives for caching or as additional storage. Also, you'd want to use SHR for your array rather than RAID 5. Well, Synology Hybrid RAID or SHR is RAID, okay? And when I say RAID 5, why you would assume I'm not talking about Synology Hybrid RAID, because the R in SHR stands for what? So I appreciate the suggestion, but try and stay with us. Try not to get ahead of us and try not to assume what you think we're about to do. I'm choosing my words very carefully. All right. Now, as for NVMe drives, they won't benefit somebody like me. NVMe drives will be added to a NAS when you're moving a lot of smaller files, files that you can cache so they can be accessed faster over the network. I'm dealing with very large video files. And because of the size of the files, it's highly unlikely I will see any benefit from the NVMe cache. However, it may be an interesting experiment just for the sake of experimentation in part 2 of this video to perhaps explore that. But in today's video, no, we will not be setting up anything other than what you see on the counter today. But I do appreciate the question. Nick Peppermint says, do you have a link for that switch? Mara will add that to the video notes right now. She will pull that. Guess we left something out. Dazzle wants to know what's the point of a switch. So again, it's just like a surge protector. So do you know what I mean when I say a surge protector? Most of us all have them. The point of the switch is to be able to connect multiple computers to communicate with each other, up to the number of plugs you have. No different than a surge protector. How many items do you want to plug into the surge protector dictates how big of a surge protector you're going to get. Because we're networking at 10 gig, we need everything we want operating off of 10 gig. In order to operate at 10 gig speeds, they all need to be plugged into the same, to a 10 gig capable network. So my network is only a 2.5 gig network. Anything I plug in that's 10 gig will run at 2.5. But if I take all the 10 gig items and plug them into a 10 gig switch, and then take that 10 gig switch and plug it into my 2.5 gig network, what that means is all the devices connecting at the 2.5 gig talking to each other will talk to each other at 10. But if the devices are talking to anything attached to the router, including my internet service provider, they will run at the speed of the router or at the speed of the internet service provider. When I get in the car and I drive, I don't just drive 60 miles an hour on every road I'm on. There are school zones where you must slow down. If I'm driving a car versus if I'm driving a big, heavy loaded truck, my speeds are going to be dictated by the size of the vehicle, the condition of the road, the weather, the condition of the vehicle, the traffic in front of me. All of these variables will dictate how fast I can drive. And in much the same way, how fast our network can go is dictated by the quality of the network cables we're using, the speed of the switch we're plugged into, the ability of the device itself to operate at a certain speed. The device can only operate at the speed of the slowest device. Your car can only go as fast as the car in front of you. So the switch is like a surge protector that you would use to plug in different, your television, your console, whatever, your gaming console, things that you're wanting to protect. Anything you've plugged directly into the wall isn't getting that protection. And then how many plugs you have, they sell surge protectors with 4 plugs, with 8, with 12, etc. So this is a very similar concept and idea that we're taking one plug and turning it into 6. And that we're doing that for 2 reasons. 1, we need more plugs. And 2, we want that surge protection. So here, by adding the switch, we're adding more plugs. The router only has 4 plugs, and they only run at 2.5. The switch can have as many as 255. You can plug a switch into a switch, just like you can plug a surge protector into another surge protector. The difference is, with surge protectors, there's a certain amount of amperage you can pull from the wall before you throw a circuit breaker, depending on the building you're in. Here in America, that's typically 15 amps. Not to confuse you, we don't deal with anything with amps. This is all very low power wiring. There's no issue of getting electrocuted or throwing a breaker. But if we wanted to add 30 more computers at 10 gig, that switch I've got doesn't have enough plugs. So I'd have to buy a bigger switch or plug switches into other switches. If all the switches are at 10 gig, then everything plugged into the 10 gig switches talking to each other will talk at 10 gig. But if anything's plugged into the router, that only runs at 2.5. So the Ferrari will have to sit behind the Chevy Chevette. Doesn't have any choice. Is that a dated reference? Robert Kajanow with a €5 contribution says, hello from Slovenia. I was a long time too busy to watch your videos, but now I'm back. I like your shows. €5 from Hearth for Gator. Thank you. Robert, thanks for hanging out with us. I love we have viewers all over the world, from Norway to Slovenia to Australia, Canada, the UK, and I hear a few in America too. So that's pretty cool. Steve Dodd renews membership, now a member for 21 months. Says hello, Carey, Marlena, and everyone in the chat. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for renewing membership. Okay, so the first thing we do, before we can even talk about plugging this into a switch or talk about going to 10 gig networking, is we just have to configure it, right? And so when we're configuring it, we're not all that interested in how fast the network speed is or explaining all that. We're getting too far ahead of ourselves. So if you're asking questions that you're having difficulty understanding, it's because you're trying to skip ahead of the class. I would suggest you let me go through my process so I can lead you there, so this will all make better sense. But if you're trying to jump ahead it's probably going to be a difficult concept for you to understand if you don't already understand it. It's a very difficult way to teach people when they're trying to dictate to the teacher what they want to learn when. There's building blocks. And if you're trying to skip 3 or 4 building blocks and just go right to the 5th one, that's going to be a difficult step to attain without tripping and falling. So there is a method to my madness. Now, once we get through that, and then you have a question, if anything I've done remains unclear at that point, do let me know. But give us a chance to build up to that. Okay. So unboxing this for the very first time. And when you order one of these are about $600, I want to say. Kind of looks like that. And this part here is going to be, I guess, cabling, power. That's just a regular standard power cable that we use on desktop computers, and the Synology NAS uses it too. I'll leave it in the box. I've got plenty of them. The next box, this next big box, this has our power. Well, we got an Ethernet cable, 2 Ethernet cables. We've got a power brick. We've got a quick installation guide. We've got some keys to lock the drawers. They're just plastic locks, so it's not all that secure. And then we've got some screws. If you wanted to secure the hard drives in with screws, you don't have to anymore. It's just a shadow of a former age. Then this piece of cardboard comes out, and NAS is all that remains. Let's get this out of here. Nothing else in here. And that's tape. All right. There we go. Mark Gaines with a £5 super chat says, Carey, my case and motherboard for my Project Zero build arrived today. What is the spirit level in the case parts for? If you have a level, like a bubble level, it's probably to make sure your graphics card is straight. That would be my guess, but I don't know. I don't recall seeing a level in a case before. I would assume the documentation may say something about it, but that would be my guess. There may be some kind of graphics card support. And if you use that, you're going to want to make sure the graphics card is completely straight. Let me bring this up to the camera. Let me show you what we've got here. On the front of the unit, it looks like any other Synology. You wouldn't tell it apart from any previous model other than what it says right down here. GS923 Plus. We've got our power button. We've got our USB port right here. We've got our 4 drive bays with the little locks that the keys are for if you wanted to lock those in. We've got a vented Synology logo on, I think, both sides. Yeah. On the top is nothing. On the back, gotta go this way. 2 cooling fans. There's our 2 1 gig Ethernet ports. Looks like an external SATA here. This is our power plug here. We have another USB port here and a Kensington lock here. And this little access door is the ability to slide in a 10 gig network card that's proprietary to this design and upgrade us to 10 gig, which we will do. And once we do that, we aren't going to use these anymore. What would be the point? On the bottom, there is access to 2 NVMe slots to use for adding storage, although you're not going to be adding much. SSD is about the biggest you can buy in NVMe format is 8 terabytes, and they're going to set you back almost $1,000 a piece. So you would be maybe adding 16 terabytes to your storage, or you could use smaller SSDs as caching drives, which is very beneficial if you're moving a lot of small files, Word documents, Excel documents, PDF files, business type stuff. It'll just happen a little bit quicker. As to the kind of performance you're going to get will differ for every single person because no one uses their computer the same way or moves the same kind or volume of files that you do, right? That's just impossible to dictate what you're going to see and if it will be beneficial to you. You will not know if you like the meal until you taste it. No one can taste it for you. So just to set expectations, when you see reviews, the benchmarks they run are very unrealistic and typically apply to no one. No single person is likely going to align with benchmarks. Your unique usage of your computer and your requirements and your values are uniquely yours. We can give you a general idea of what to expect, but at the end of the day, you're the one who's going to have to experience it. You cannot avoid life experience and then make a decision based on someone else's experience and expect to get exactly the same results. So I just want to put that out there right now. We can give you some examples, but whether or not those examples apply to you or what percentage, 20% of that applies to you, you're going to have to figure that out. Generally speaking, the people who one second. Bear with me for a minute. The people who care about such things likely have no need for this, or they already know they have a need for this. There's usually nobody who says, without any experience whatsoever, by watching a review, saying, that's going to run exactly the same way for me. Because if you've got any experience in this industry, how people use computers, how people use storage, how often they use it, how many files they're moving, what kind of files they're moving, the distance they're moving the files, how many computers will have access at the same time, how many total files are they going to have? Is it going to be thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions? I've seen it all. No two are ever the same. So therefore, the performance will be different based on the usage. And anybody who has any experience with these should already know the answer to that question. Will an SSD cache help me? It's not something I can answer for you. Only you can answer that. It's not universally good for everybody. Some people put an SSD cache in. Someone like me, where I'm moving big video files, 95% of the files on my NAS are all multiple gig individual files. It's too big for the SSD. Caching it doesn't make any sense. I could spend the money and put it in and configure it, and it wouldn't hurt anything, but it wouldn't necessarily help me either. But another client running a lot of smaller files that they're accessing frequently could see a night and day difference, and somebody else could see a minor improvement. Which one are you? You'd have to tell me. I can't tell you that. All right, let's get this set aside. Now, we've never powered this on before, and we've gone through Synology setups before. And this will be very similar, maybe even exactly the same. I don't know yet because I haven't done it. So let's get started. And Morton Bob wants to know, given the relatively low cost of NVMe drives, why not set up a caching drive for the versatility or potential time savings later? Because later, the cost will be cheaper. If I say to myself, and this is a problem with the mentality of a certain percentage of the tech community, this justification to buy unnecessary high-end items at high prices to try and future-proof your unknown future needs, which may or may never materialize, in my opinion, you're better off waiting until you need it, if you even need it, and purchase it at that time, because the technology is only getting larger, like NVMe drives are becoming more capacious, larger, and the price is going down while they're also getting faster. So why would you buy something today, paying today's prices for something you don't need yet? Wait until and if you need it, and then buy it at current prices, which will generally always be lower. But to each his own. I'm not telling you not to do it. But if you were my client and we were having this consultation together, I would advise you to keep your money in your pocket and don't buy another part that can fail or cause a problem with the idea that there's no downside. There's always a downside. SSDs fail. They cost money. There's a cost to configure it. If you're a home hobby user with money burning a hole in your pocket, have fun. But those aren't my customers, right? So as a business owner, my advice to another business owner, or even to a home user, in such a rare case that a home user would consult with me, these aren't generally, I don't think I've ever had a home user consult with me about setting up a NAS. They're either hobbyists that already do this on their own, they don't call me for help, and they've already decided what they want. So if you have the money and the time and you want to pay for it now and you want to go through all that effort for something that won't benefit you until maybe in the future at some point, don't let me get in your way. But for everyone else who's more practical, my advice is to not buy something you don't need, because having something you don't need and don't use is the same as not having it. But I bet you could probably use the money you spent for something you need today. At least if you're like most people I know. So that's why, if that answers your question. Some of us have a lot more money than others, and we can buy stuff we don't need. It has no impact on our quality of life. And others go, gee, I wish I didn't spend that money for that thing I didn't need, because now I can't afford the thing I do need. That's completely unrelated. So that's my philosophy. Now here we've got the drive trays, and the drive trays have these clips that come out. We've shown these before. You just pull on that, and that's why we don't need to use screws anymore. And the idea is that, especially in a business environment where time is money, when a drive fails, we'll get a light on the front of the unit. The unit will configure it to email us and alert us if a drive fails. Because we'll be on a RAID 5, we lose one drive of capacity, but if any of the 4 die, it can rebuild itself immediately with no special software required by simply replacing the bad drive with another of the same capacity, preferably the same make and model, but definitely has to be the same capacity. And then it will rebuild all the missing data based on the overlap it has on the other 3. It's pretty incredible mathematics involved in that equation to enable any of the 4 drives to fail. Doesn't matter. The other 3 can always recover the 4th one. But the cost of that is, instead of having 8, 16, 24, 32 terabytes of storage, we're only going to have 8, 16, 24 with one of the 8 terabyte drives. We're going to, all 4 drives are used equally, but essentially 2 terabytes of the other 3 drives are stored here, 2 terabytes of the other 3 drives are stored here, et cetera, et cetera. So each drive contains 2 terabytes of data of the other 3. So if any one of those 4 die, it's still operational, and you need to get in and swap the bad drive out ASAP. No tools are required. Makes this job easier. And as soon as you get the new drive in, you can start rebuilding your array and everything's good. Now, this isn't a backup. If a virus were to infect this, if somebody were to just pick it up and steal it, or the building caught fire or was flooded, there's 1,000 different ways. This is not a backup. This is a central storage locker that everybody in the building can access. And if you want to, you can turn access on to create your own cloud storage. I don't do that personally. I don't like the security risks. You can't just set it and forget it. Security's constantly evolving. And so you will have to be sure you're on top of your updates at all times, and you make yourself vulnerable to attack. If you don't have a door, then you don't have a door somebody can break into. On the other hand, if you stay on top of it, it's relatively secure. But my preference is not to utilize it that way, but that's just me. So when we put the drive in, we're just going to put the connectors facing the back of the drive. Obviously, if we put the drive in this way, we can't get to the connectors with the door there. So it's pretty intuitive how that's going to go in there. And then the holes on the side of the drive are going to align with the holes in the tray. And then these little plastic clips, and you see how one end has a little lip on it. That goes towards the back. And we're just going to put that in like so. If I could see without my glasses, you just lock that in. You push it down, you'll hear it snap. You should hear it on both. If the drive is aligned with the holes, there it goes. It'll fit in a lot easier if the holes are aligned. Don't force it. And again, the little bent end there is going to go to the end. And I'm just going to set this in the track. Push down here, and here it locks in. That's it. Now we can slide this tray back in. It's only going to go in one direction. Remember, it opens from the bottom. We'll do the next one, and we're going to repeat this three more times. David Graham says, "What's money? Oh, this is," as he contributes $2 in Super Chat. Thank you, David. Trevor Dunn has a quote from Synology promoting SSD as a caching device that he quotes, "By storing frequently accessed data on an SSD cache, you can reduce your input-output latency and improve your system performance of your Synology NAS." Well, this assumes a couple of things. One, your files have to be smaller files for that to work. The larger the files are, up to a certain point, the SSD cache actually does become slower. Imagine it this way. Here's what I like to talk about when we talk about cache. C-A-C-H-E, not C-A-S-H. Two different caches. This has been the same since the 1980s. Cache hasn't changed. The amount of cache has changed. But what cache does for you is when you're moving smaller files routinely, regularly, frequently, having it in the cache makes those files access quicker. It may just be milliseconds. It depends how many people are utilizing the NAS at the same time. In an office building with 20 employees, this could make a massive performance increase. For you sitting at home, probably not much. But depends on how you use it. There are certain assumptions that are being made. And a claim like that from Synology is not inaccurate, but it only applies under ideal, like this is best case scenario. Okay, this is what the SSD cache can do for you if you're utilizing it properly. If I gave you a big mathematical equation, if I had a big whiteboard and I wrote down this, I don't know, calculus or trigonometry, whatever, and I said, calculate the answer for me. And you went through doing all that work and you got to the answer, right? I'm circling the answer. Took you a certain amount of time to do that. Let's just say you just took the answer and pushed it off to the side, but it was still within your reach. The number you've written down is right there. You've kept it available to you. And the reason you kept it available to you is just in case the instructor asks you to solve that same equation again, you will not have to go through all that work. You've already done it. The answer's right there. Now, let's say over the course of a year, the instructor has presented a different equation to you every day for the entire year. And you've been caching or storing the answers to each equation. And you've got so much in the cache, it's going to take you longer to look through the cache to find it than it will be for you to just work out the equation again. That's what cache does. It helps until it doesn't. So under the right circumstances and the right use case scenarios, cache makes sense. And that's probably true for most people. I don't think most people are moving big movies like I am. I'm making these YouTube videos. I've got to edit them. I don't edit on that computer. I've got to get the videos off of that computer and onto the editing computer. So I either file share between the two computers or, my preference, have a NAS between them, store everything on the NAS. And then if I decide I want to edit on a different computer, any computer on my network has access to my NAS. I don't have to keep copying it over each individual machine. That's my particular use case scenario. So an SSD cache will cost me more, right? Because I have to buy the NVMe drives, and will likely see no performance increase in my type of usage. It's not always better. It's sort of like, it's almost like anything in life. When somebody says you should get this because it's better, better is subjective. There is no such thing as universally better. Better is better for you and worse for me. You understand? It's not one size fits all. This is all better for everyone at all times and all scenarios and all cases. Simply not true. There's very few things in life I can think of where that's true. When you're reading marketing materials from any company, they're going to promote best case scenarios. That's their job, okay? Best case scenarios, this is your performance. This is your heat. This is your storage space. Best case, not the only case. Let me just step back here and finish installing these. Done with that one, that one. Hey, there's Mike's unboxing reviews and how to. Hey, Mara, do me a favor. Will you turn Mike's unboxing reviews and how to blue, please? Mike's unboxing says SSD cache is a good idea if you're using a iSCSI map drive in Windows or Linux or Mac. I don't even know what that is. iSCSI? Is that a type of drive? Is that a format? Is it how you're mapping it? I'm lost. Doesn't affect me, my business, or any of my customers because I've never had to be in that scenario. So I'll take your word for it, Mike. Good to see you, my friend. If you haven't checked out Mike's videos, Mike's in the UK. He makes excellent how-to videos and reviews. Check out his channel. If you like my channel, I think you'll like Mike's. What's the RPM on those hard drives? RPM doesn't really have much effect on a network attached storage drive because your bottleneck is typically the network. However, on a 10 gig network, that does change a bit. But you are combining the speeds of 4 drives together. So let's say each drive did 200 megabytes per second on a mechanical drive. Then 4 times that would be, best case scenario, 800 megabytes per second. So the network port being able to, at 1 gig, only transfer about 120, 130 megabytes per second. That's your bottleneck, not your drive speed. You don't want to go too fast on your RPMs and create a heat issue inside the NAS, although you see we've got some great cooling on the back here regardless. But to answer your question, and the reason why I didn't even bother looking is on a NAS, it generally doesn't matter. It's not, if this was plugged in directly through a Thunderbolt 4 interface as an external storage direct connect to the back of the computer, that'd be one thing. But as a NAS, its design is to be able to be a data storage locker for multiple users on a network to access simultaneously without having to wait your turn. So the speed of the drive is far less important. But again, when we move up to 10 gig, it becomes more of a consideration. So, I mean, fair question, but the writing is so small. Does it say? I got voltage, I got manufacturing date, got a firmware version, I've got an interface. I don't see an RPM. I think if you Google this model number, you can report back what the internet says the speed of the HAT 3310 8T drive is. As I'm looking through serial numbers, part numbers, see voltages, date of manufacture, where it was manufactured. What I do not see is an RPM. So I don't know. But I also don't care. Like I said, it's this should not be our bottleneck, I don't think. We've never run a 10 gig network before, but I fully expect we should be seeing over 900 megabytes per second in our data transfers. And if we're not seeing that, then maybe it's because our drives are too slow. On the other hand, some people use network attached storage devices as video servers to record all the cameras around their building instead of going up to the cloud. And this becomes like a video surveillance recorder. And when you're running constant writes, because the cameras are on all the time and are always writing data, you want slower video surveillance drives because they don't generate as much heat, they don't need to run as fast, and they will last longer in that use case scenario. That's another reason why businesses might buy multiple NASs, one dedicated just to record the video, because it may be cheaper to do that than to pay a service in the cloud, and your access is much faster. than it would be having to wait for the data to come down from the cloud if you wanted to play it back. There are many, many different uses for NASs, not just file sharing. So I want to make that very clear. We're focusing on the file sharing in this series, but it does so much more. And if you want to learn all the capabilities of what a NAS can do, there are two YouTube channels I recommend. One is called Space Rex. The word space, the word Rex, R-E-X, no spaces, put it together. The second one is called NAS Compares, N-A-S Compares, all one word. No, YouTube channels don't have spaces in their names. So those two are excellent channels if you want to deep dive into these and get more insight of certain features that the general audience and my audience doesn't care about. But if you're not the general audience, if you want to do a deep dive, I encourage you to do so. But you won't find it here. You need to go over there, and then you can see the different competitors and compare them if you want to go that deep into it. Those are two places that I would recommend that you visit. El Perez says, how fast time flies. It's been a month since I became a member already. I just noticed my badge with a number 1. Well, right on, Al. Well, thanks for joining us here. We love having you. Don't let my lack of eye contact imply any insincerity. I'm trying to do two things at once. What's going on, Mike's Unboxing? What have you been working on lately? Ray Burke has a question many people don't seem to understand, and that is why all the blue folks have been removed. Back in the day, YouTube used to actually pay for our content, and we would get a lot of spam and bots and trolls. YouTube is having difficulty getting any advertisers, and the advertisers they do get, they're dealing with people skipping ads, and it's costing the advertisers too much. And the advertisers are telling YouTube, we're not going to pay you that much anymore. So YouTube says, okay, well, what are you going to pay us? And then a bunch of people became content creators, and YouTube has to take that money and divide it amongst all the content creators. And the bottom line is the channel in YouTube itself is evolving and changing. Becoming a creator today to survive off the income that you can make from monetization would be only possible if you lived in the basement with your parents. As a result, all moderators have been removed, and we no longer need them, first of all. The concept behind that is no longer applicable. It used to be being a subscriber had value. And I'm sorry to say, while being a subscriber still has some value, YouTube has determined, not me, that you being a viewer is worth 80 to 90% less in the last 2 years than in previous years. Despite the channel growing, expanding, and having over 1,700 videos in our library, we are making today from YouTube what we used to make when the channel was 1/3 of the size it is now. So we are 66% bigger, and we earn 80 to 90% less. So we turned on members mode in order to see if the viewers will fund us so we can keep doing this. And for some reason, and this is where things get a little mixed up, I think I'm doing the viewers a service by offering them a free education. For some reason, the viewers think they're doing me a favor by watching the video. And I guess that's where the disconnect is. Viewers are left under the impression that I'm, or any creator, is making money from you watching the video. To make 1 penny, do you have any idea how many viewers I need now, today, based on YouTube's valuation, not mine? It is extraordinary the cost of these videos versus what YouTube will pay me strictly on monetization. So to give you an example, if we were still doing things the way we were doing them, there wouldn't be any videos. There's just no way I could afford it. I would need to be right now working at a client's earning money. I have to pay rent and electricity and food and take for the car and the insurance, everything else like everybody else. And I can't do both this and go out and help clients at the same time. So if this revenue falls below the cost of what it's costing me to do it, you being a subscriber doesn't mean I owe you anything. I'd say that was a fair trade. You got the free content, I got the view. That's it, the transaction's over. If you want more, give more. So for the members who contribute financially to help keep us moving, we give them certain things regular viewers don't get, exclusive videos and favors and things like that, in order to show my appreciation. But as long as somebody's just taking and they think they're doing me a favor, taking it, that's where we're having a disconnect. I've had clients, I'll give a real true story just to explain this in depth. When I first started my business, I was very inexpensive. I was trying to gain clients, and I thought by being cheap, people will refer me and I won't have to pay for marketing. So let's say I charged $50 per repair. Well, it kept me really busy, but I really wasn't making much money. So about 2 years go by and I'm just tired and frustrated and I have to raise the rate. So I raise it to $80. This is the 90s, okay, early 2000s. Everybody else was well over 100. So I was still a bargain. But one of my original customers calls me. An original customer. I want you to think about this. And he calls me, he's only been a customer like once a year, he calls me. So by year 3, so he's used my service twice for $50, he calls me. And I go, okay, but there, we talk about the problem, come on site to fix it. And I say, well, the rate's gone up. He goes, well, what's your rate now? I said, it's $80. So, wow, that's a big jump from 50. I said, yeah, well, I was under market value for far too long. He goes, yeah, but I've been one of your first customers. Wasn't there a loyalty reward? Oh, so you did me the favor. Let me understand correctly. You called around to get the best price, right? That's why you hired me. And when I did the work, you liked the work I did, that I met all of your expectations or exceeded them. And that's why you called me again. You didn't do that for me. You did that for you. Okay, well, I can't survive and there won't be a business if I don't raise the prices. I still think $80 is far under market value, but feel free to call around. But he thought, because of his loyalty, I should just keep him at $50. And if I ran my business that way, I would not have a business. You might go to McDonald's every day. Do you get a different price than the rest of us? Maybe I go to McDonald's once every 2 years. You got to pay the same price as a regular person there. But the difference is McDonald's isn't giving away their stuff for free. I am. So for the people who want to help finance this, we have the deepest gratitude possible. Because without those contributors, you would have no video to watch and no community to be blue in to begin with. So that is the two sides of that coin. There's the viewer side who doesn't really understand, in my opinion, how deep and how complicated this side of it is and how much it costs and who's paying the bill. I love doing this, but I also love fixing computers. If I go back to full-time fixing computers, there won't be time for this anymore. But at the end of the month, I'm still responsible for getting my bills paid. And if those bills don't get paid, there's no way I can do this. So we hope you appreciate the free content, but we hope you don't think that's not enough and we owe you something. We certainly appreciate you. But if you want to get something more, give more. I think that's a general good rule in life. Trevor Dunn says these hard drives show they run at 7,200 RPM. Thank you, Trevor. I'm not going to read Mike's content out loud. Oh, don't open that can. Don't open that can, Mike. Let's see. Andy Kane mentions he pays more now than I did last year for the same stuff. Yeah, just go grocery shopping. Here in America, I used to shop for myself for about $80, and it would carry me about 2 weeks. Now it seems like every time I go shopping, and I'm not adding it up, like I'm just putting things in the cart that I want, and I figure out what it's going to cost at the end. I have a general idea, right, in my head. And it's almost always, just for me, for 2 weeks, somewhere between $115 and $125. I'm buying all the same things. But the difference is, I am giving something of value, of cash, and I'm getting goods equal to the amount of cash I spent, or that's the theory. When someone's watching videos for free, I don't know why they think I'm making money from that. I used to. And I suppose technically I still make money from it, but think about this for a minute. If you're a teacher in a classroom and you have 30 students, and the school pays you $60 an hour, but the school decides they don't want to hire another teacher. So instead of 30 students, they're going to jam 60 students in your classroom, but you're still going to make $60 an hour. So how much money per student did you make when you had 30 students? And how much money per student are you making when you have 60? By having more viewers that don't contribute, it's costing me money. And people don't understand this concept. There's a whole different side to being a creator that the average viewer has no concept of. And my best advice is try it sometime and let's see how long you can go. We've been doing this since 2008. Now, granted, in 2008, there was no monetization and videos were limited to 15 minutes. So I had to break computer build videos into like 6 parts. And they were edited. We weren't live. They were standard definition and not HD. All the equipment in 2008 I used is all retired. I've changed equipment out, cameras, lighting, even the counter in the studio itself several times at great expense so I can continue making the content for free. How is that sustainable as a business model? How does that work? So anyway, that's the, we're just reacting to the policies and decisions YouTube is making. If YouTube wants to value you as a viewer the way they used to, we'd be in much better shape. We would be making 3 times, well, let me rephrase. We'd be making 2 to 3 times more money in ad revenue like we used to 3 or 4 years ago. Our ad revenue income has dropped somewhere between 80 and 90%. I don't know if you understand how significant that is. And we didn't do anything wrong. All we've done is grow and expand since then. You think growing and expanding, you'd earn more money. We can't even get back to where we were. And there's nothing we can do about it other than ask the viewers if they want to see the content to contribute. The view itself is too insignificant, unfortunately. And if we don't have the revenue to pay for the content, I guess I can just talk about the news. Those are the kind of videos you want to see. Those don't cost me anything to make those. All right, we've got all our drives installed. I like to talk about the challenges behind the camera because most content creators don't. I like to be as transparent as possible, and while some people see it as whining, I'm simply responding to help people understand how we got where we are. I didn't wake up one day and say, I want to do this. I was forced to react to changes YouTube policies made. So you're going to see a lot of YouTube channels. You've already seen a lot of YouTube channels shut down, and more are shutting down. I keep every day, at least once a week on YouTube, I see somebody saying goodbye. They just can't do it anymore. Now, Mike, that's a question I want to ask Mike. I would love to know how Mike's unboxing and review videos can be sustainable, making the content he makes with the frequency that he makes it and the quality that he makes it with. He must have a day job to pay for this. I find it very difficult to believe that he's making any money that doesn't just offset the cost of making the video. In other words, buying the equipment, taking the time away from work. And that may not be information he wants to disclose to me. Most content creators keep that all a secret. But I'd love to know how he's doing that, because if he's doing something differently than me that's working, I need to know what that is. But thankfully, we have a great community here, and we have a number of members who do contribute. And they're the ones who are essentially paying for today's content if you're watching for free. Just so you know, if you see any of our folks in green in the chat room, it's because of them you're able to watch this video. And of course, thanks to Synology for sending us the unit. Which way does this plug go in? It only goes in one way. I don't have my glasses on and I can't see the... I will figure this out if it's the last thing I do. It wants to bend around the exact opposite direction. I have struggled so much with this that I think I've split it. Is that supposed to do that? Look how much that moves. Is it supposed to move? Maybe it is. If you look closely at the end of the connector, usually has one flat side, or in this case, it's got a little keyway there. And that little nub has to align where you got to find a little groove, which appears to be towards me. And the cable wants to go on every direction but that one, unless I turn it this way. Then I don't have to bend the cable around. That's why I was struggling. Okay. Then we can plug this in. So we'll give it some power here. We'll plug it into our network right here. I'm not going to plug the 10 gig network card in until I verify this works like it's supposed to. If we plug in the 10 gig network card and this stops working, we know what the cause is. But if we've never turned this on before and we just start adding a bunch of changes to it, we won't know if it was broken before the changes or if we broke it during the changes. So I like to limit the number of changes I make into steps, unless this is a pre-existing unit that I'm already just, I'm familiar with it, I'm just upgrading it. That's my preference. That's how I choose to work, because I find it does take a little longer when things work right, and it takes much less time when things go wrong. Figure it out and get it back up and running. So it's just my preference of choice there. "3D Everything" says, yes, put your glasses on. I know I have to do that. Yeah, I know. I just don't like them. Mike's Unboxing says he sent me a PayPal contribution. What? I should be sending you the contribution. Yeah, from Mike and Kath over at Mike's Unboxing and Reviews, $12.28 United States dollars, converted from pounds. That's very kind of you. I would have never seen that coming. Charles Purdy, speaking which, with a PayPal $25 super chat. Oh, sorry, PayPal contribution. He says, I've been away on vacation, but it's nice to be back. What's a vacation? How do you say it? Am I pronouncing that correctly? Vacation? Vacation. Hey, Mara, look up what a vacation is. What is that? You don't just work all the time? Who does the work when you're not there? Our friend Peter Laycock says happy birthday on an Amazon. It's not my birthday, but a very generous Amazon gift card contribution from Buster. A super nice guy. Vacation. Oystein getting an LOL. Andy Kane says, what would happen if you plugged that 10 gig in? Well, Andy, I don't know. I've never done it before. But I'll tell you what I would do. Based on 30 plus years of experience in the industry, I wouldn't do it while the computer was on. Even if it says you can, I still wouldn't. Number two, once the 10 gig card is in, and the Synology DiskStation Manager software is loaded onto these drives, it should automatically see the drive and load the driver and make it available to us. That's how it should work. It's my understanding. I've never done it before. I'm going to follow the normal procedures I have followed for over 30 years with computers and tech gadgets, and I expect it will work as all the other tech gadgets have. I'm not interested in trying to do something differently just to see what will happen, as it will ruin the part 2 of this video if I break the unit. So I'm not quite sure the purpose of that question, but I strongly recommend anytime you're changing parts out, you shut the power off. The only difference would be if you have a failed hard drive, leave the unit on, unplug the bad drive, install a new drive, plug it back in. With a NAS, not with your home computer, but with a NAS, it's designed to be left on so you can swap drives and the unit will continue to work with only 3 drives functional. And when the 4th drive is plugged back in, you log into the Synology Manager software, click the button to rebuild it, rebuild the array, and nobody using the NAS should notice any difference. They'll still access everything. There's no data loss. Now, if you lose 2 or more drives at the same time, or a drive has failed and you ignored it, you're like, I'll get to it later, but then of the 3 drives remaining, another one fails before you get around to it, you've lost everything. It's all gone. So at least with this configuration. Rick Lakes with a $4 super chat says, hello. Hey, welcome in, Rick. Rick joins us from Minnesota. Shop Persian Rugs with a $10 super chat says, here's a little tip for you guys. I've been building a ton of systems this year and having a blast. You rock. Well, thank you so much. David Graham with a $2 super chat said, vacations are like money. You have to work to earn more. I'm not working hard enough. How many have I earned? When do I get to collect on my earnings? When's the dividend, man? Stu wants to know if I'll get into installing packages. I don't use any packages on my NASs for myself or my clients. Again, if you want that level of detail, there's hundreds of packages to choose from. They're all very vertical niche packages for very specific needs that I don't cover here. We're not getting in, we're not a NAS channel. The purpose of me displaying and showcasing and introducing the NAS is to show it as a storage locker, period. That's how every client I have uses it. We don't use any apps on the NAS, 0. We have no need for them. They will not benefit us. So there are other YouTube channels that I previously mentioned that do go into that level of detail if you're interested in that. But no, I've never done that and probably never will. It's just too specific. If I've got 300 viewers right now watching, why would I want to isolate this to just one of them? Well, the other 299 are just not interested. So that's the reason why. Trying to appeal to the general mass and general use case. But I love if somebody says, hey, I'd love to dive deeper. I think that's great. If we can give you a taste and it makes you hungry to want more, we welcome you to go dive down into the rabbit holes of many of the different subject matters that we introduce our audience to under practical, generic, one-size-fits-all kind of solutions. And then if you want something more specific and we lead you to that other path, I think that's great. Continue to expand your knowledge. Mike's Unboxing Review says the Synology Active Backup for Business is an amazing way to back up one or many PCs automatically. If you haven't used it before, it's really worth a look. Well, I appreciate the information, Mike. Let me explain to you how I configure my clients. Let me step up a little bit. I'm not suggesting, first of all, that the packages are worthless. I don't see any need for them. And here's why. Every client computer that I service is configured exactly the same. Same Windows, same apps, same map network drive, no password required, just sign in. No domain, just a peer-to-peer simple network. For backups, I have a SanDisk 2 terabyte SSD that plugs into the main administrator of the office, plugs into her computer. The computers are left on 24/7. The Synology, the router, that's all configured to email me if there's any problems, so I don't have to keep watching it. Depending on the client and how often they want to do backups, for some clients it's once a month, for some clients it's once a week. How much data are you creating in the week? How much do you want to pay me to back it up? And we have to discuss this with each individual business owner. And I'm not a fan of automation, Mike. I don't trust it. Automation's great until you need it, and then you find out it hasn't been working. So automation, in my opinion, and in my experience, it needs auditing and babysitting. Make sure it's, it says it's backing up, but is it really? I've encountered that too many times from other techs in the past. I'll give you an example. I went into an office and I asked if they were making backups. And they said they were. It's on this machine over here. And the machine in the back room, it had a DAT tape, backup tape drive, and it was whirring. It was making all kinds of sounds. And I go, does it ever stop? And they go, no. So you don't know how often what's it doing? Like, you don't know how often it's backing. We don't know, but it's obviously backing up. I mean, look, it's doing something. It wasn't backing anything up. They just heard the noise and said, well, it's doing something. It must be. No, that thing hadn't backed up in months. I said, well, this is slow. It's unreliable. And I recommend we just retire it and go with a more modern backup solution. They also had 3 servers. We retired 2 of the servers, took everything off of them, put it on a NAS. We had to keep 1 server for QuickBooks or Quicken. Other than that, everything was moved to a NAS, less power consumption, less security concerns. And then file synchronization of everything on the NAS to the backup drive. Simple file synchronization. No encoded backup files that require special software to restore. We also have the recycle bin enabled and set to auto empty every 30 days. One client had a tech set this up with 32 file revisions and no scheduled emptying of the recycle bin. And it just ran out of space and they couldn't use it anymore. And the tech told them it was broken and they had to replace it. Anyway, I try to keep things as simple as possible. So my philosophy for the clients that I support is I will log in remotely to the main administrator's computer, make sure I do the updates, clean the temp files, make sure the antivirus or Malwarebytes is up to date. Just do regular maintenance. And while I'm doing that, I'll run file synchronization software to synchronize what's on the NAS to what's on the connected SSD. That's just in the back. It's hidden. Nobody sees it. The administrator knows what it is. They know not to unplug it. It's got a label on it. Backup number 1, backup number 2, backup number 3. After a month, for this one particular client, I take backup number 1. I go on site, take backup number 1. I replace it with backup number 2, resynchronize it again. I don't have to sit and watch it. Set it to go. I get in the car. I go home. I keep the other backup drive. So if there's a fire or an employee deletes everything because they're pissed off, viruses, ransomware, we have an offsite copy. And it's faster for me to drive over there and restore that copy than to put it up in the cloud where the business owner is not comfortable having it. Not that you mentioned the cloud, but I'm just saying. So about once every 3 months, and again, this is based on what the owner wants to do and how much they want to spend, I will give the owner a backup copy to take home and put away. And that way, because nobody cares more about the data than the business owner. If something happens to me and happens to his business, he's still got that. And even if it's 3 months old, in a worst case scenario, he's calculating that risk. And he's okay with it. And that is the routine for that one client. Now I have another client who has 6 backup drives, all SSD. They plug them in on a Tuesday. And when they leave for the day, I will log in remotely late at night and I will update. And I'm only updating, well, remember there's 6 backup drives. So each drive has 6 weeks of missing data. So those backups take a little bit longer, but it's a small business. And if they find out they deleted something by mistake, we can go back up to 6 weeks to recover it. Versus if we're just rotating 2 drives, we only have, whatever the interim is between backups to restore those. So it's all different philosophies, and nobody's right, nobody's wrong. It's a question of what work am I willing to do for how much money? And if you're comfortable, having the PCs backed up, I just as soon say, look, let's just take the spare computer. Every one of my clients that I have a managed service provider for has a spare computer, and let's move the spare computer into your office. The clients or the customers, the employees, I should say, should not be saving anything to their local hard drive. We install small hard drives to discourage that. Save it all on your mapped drive letter Z. We usually use Z. That's because I used to use G, but they started to plug in so many USB devices, we're getting drive conflicts. So that was a bad habit, just setting it to G back in the 90s. And now I'm just like, just go to the end of the alphabet, right? So we go to Z now. And, they'll plug in a printer that's got 4 USB card readers on it, and then they get E, F, G, and H, you know what I mean? And G overlaps. It creates all kinds of problems. So anyway, it's complex, right? But I don't back up the individual machines. There's nothing that should be unique. They should all be the same. They can grab a spare machine and be up and running. They don't have to reach out to me other than to send me an email and say, hey, my computer went bad. When you get a chance, can you fix it? And then I will make arrangements to go over there, pick it up, bring it back here and work on it, get it fixed, deliver it back, and they can switch them back or keep the other one as the spare. This takes all the pressure and stress off of me, and it also takes all the pressure and stress off of them, and it keeps the employees productive at all times. That's the logic. Now, if there was one employee there who had a different computer from everybody else, I would probably use a Acronis TrueImage to back it up and just do it once. And then if something happens to it, I restore the Acronis TrueImage, but any changes that were made outside of Windows updates or software updates, all the files they created should still be on the NAS, and the NAS gets backed up, and only the NAS. If I backed up the PCs to the NAS, we'd also need more NAS space. The backups would take me longer, and it would cost my customer more. Okay, so that's my philosophy. You may not agree with it. You may think your way is more efficient, to each their own, but that's what I love about this business. We can each solve a problem 16 different ways, and none of us are wrong. As long as your customer's happy. I have not found any packages on the Synology that I have any use for. That doesn't mean they're not useful. They're just not useful to me. I'm not running Plex. I'm not running any video surveillance that I need to record locally. I guess what I'm trying to say is all the problems for my customers I've already solved long before this was available. So the fact that this can do something I've already solved, why fix it if it ain't broke? I am a keep it simple person. I always like simple. Okay. Go Shadow wants to know, how much does it annoy you when a program updates and changes defaults, like changing backups to a cloud-based when you had it set to local? I don't know, because I don't do things automatically. If I set anything to run automatically, I babysit it. I've been using computers since 1982, and they're never reliable. Never. That is one standard that has stayed true for the last 42 years. They're never reliable. To this day, for you to automate something and not constantly audit it or babysit it on a regular basis will come back to haunt you. And in my line of work, it could cost me my job. So if I screw up and it costs me my job, I can blame me. But if I set something to automate and I'm not monitoring it or auditing it on somewhat of a regular basis, once a month, once every 3 months, then when it fails and I don't know about it, something happens and we go to do a recovery and it's not there, that's my liability. And I don't have it to absorb. I will go out of business. My reputation will be ruined. At that point, I hope I'm ready for retirement, because that will put an entire customer out of business. So I'll lose my business, they'll lose their business. The customers are going to be inconvenienced and have to take their business elsewhere. There is a lot riding on business backups. Doesn't get much more important to this unless you're in a hospital. Speaking of hospitals, who do you think maintains the hospital equipment? How important do you think it is for that kidney dialysis software to work correctly? Thomas says our machine is solid blue right now. When you first install, thank you, Thomas. When you first install brand new drives and set up a NAS for the first time, there is a setup process that takes a few minutes. It's a one-time thing. And let's get a machine. Well, maybe I could use the streamer and log into the NAS. Now, there's a few ways we can find the NAS. If we know the name of the NAS, we can ping it, but I don't know the name of it. If we know the IP address assigned to the NAS, we can go directly in our browser to the IP address. If we don't know the IP address to the NAS, we can look for it and see if it'll auto-find it. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. You go to find.synology.com. It'll search your local network. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. And then finally, you can download the Synology Discovery software. Small file. You install it on your computer, you click it, and it searches your network, and it will find the NAS every time. I mean, assuming it's ready and it's plugged in, obviously those things have to be prerequisites to accessing it. It's true of any NAS. So we have multiple ways that we can access this. We can also download an app for our phone and do it that way. So there's another way. For me personally, I tend to be old school because we didn't have these. So we always did it the old, well, there was only one way to do it back in the day. And I still do it that way because no matter how much the options continue, that base option has always stayed. It's never changed. I can still do it today the same way I used to do it in the 90s. Or I can choose to do it one way with a QNAP and one way with a Synology and another way with TerraMaster. Or I can do it the same way across the board, regardless of apps or smartphones, regardless of any additional help. It will always work. It is sort of the foundation or baseline that every network connected device will have. So instead of accommodating the device to learn that specific dance, I have a generic dance that works universally. Why have to complicate things? I like to keep things simple. The simplest thing I can do, first of all, is just try the find.synology.com and see if it finds it. So if I bring up the browser over here, bear with me for a second. Our screen capture on. Okay, and we just type in find, hello keyboard, find.synology.com. I guess it changed to finds. So it's going to search my local area network to see if I have a NAS. And hey, it found one. Now I couldn't do that back in the day. So this is one new thing I like, but it's pretty unique to Synology. So I'll select it. You know, you could have multiple Synology NASs. We just have the one, so it only found one. And you have to click the one you want, even though we only have one. And then we'll click connect. We have to agree to the license agreement, which, you know, sure, whatever that says. And it says, welcome, set up your Synology DS923 Plus now. Install. Automatically download the latest version from the Synology website. Yes. All data will be deleted. Well, these are brand new drives that don't have data on them. But if you're using older drives, you should know this is going to wipe them clean. I hope you have everything you want off of them backed up. Again, these are brand new drives. So this is a boilerplate disclaimer that does not apply to us. Connect, continue. And now it starts to download and install the DSM, the Synology DiskStation Manager. This is a one-time setup thing you need to do, and how long it'll take will depend upon your internet connection speed and the model of Synology you have. I'm not sure if I skipped over this, but when we look at the specifications of this, one of the things you're getting with the 923 Plus, as I mentioned, the Plus is like the enhanced version. So this website here, which we have a link to in the video notes below, goes over all the technical details of this NAS, including the specifications of how many CPUs it has, how many cores that CPU has, if it's 32 or 64-bit, what frequency the CPU runs at under idle and turbo speeds, whether or not it's got hardware encryption, how much system memory it comes with, how many memory slots there are, how much total memory it could hold. This will be like laptop SO-DIMM memory, so it'll do two 16-gig modules for a total of 32. Now, why does that matter? Well, if you run those packages we were talking about, they take resources. You could run virtual machines on this, and if you do that, you're going to want as much power as possible or a lot of patience. I don't do any of that. So for me, adding more RAM will benefit me zero. It will benefit my clients zero. This only benefits, more memory only benefits if you have packages you're running, and then that depends on what the package is and how resource hungry it is. It's got 4 drive bays. You're able to add a DX517 to this through that other port I showed you, and that can add 5 more drives for a total of 9, I believe. We have the 2 NVMe slots we talked about, and you can use 2.5-inch SATA drives in this if you wanted to. You'd have to screw them down. You wouldn't be able to clip them in because they're not wide enough to reach the clips. Hot swappable drives. Remember I said you didn't have to turn this off to replace a hard drive? Well, you do have to turn this off if you want to replace one of the SSDs. Those are not what we call hot swappable. Hot meaning the device is on, it's hot. Compatible drive type indicates drives that have been tested to be compatible with Synology. I want you to understand that sentence. If it tells you a drive is incompatible, that doesn't mean the drive won't work. It means the drive has not been tested. So maybe it will, maybe it won't. This term does not indicate the maximum connection speed of each drive bay. We have 2 1 gig LAN ports and 2 USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports with the expansion port, which is eSATA, which is again to add another Synology bay to this. Size, weight, information about the system fans, fan speed modes, 3 different modes here. Front LED brightness controls, restore on power loss or stay off on power loss. The noise level is very quiet. You can schedule it to power on or off in the Synology DiskStation software if you want it. I suggest you just leave it on. It supports Wake on LAN and Wake on WAN. It's a 100-watt power supply. It auto switches, so the same power supply will work in Europe without any special adapter other than the plug itself. We talk about the heat, the BTUs, operating temperature, storage temperature, humidity levels. It's got to be within. Warranty is a 3-year hardware warranty, extendable to 5 years if you buy their extended warranty plan. And then I'll talk about what the box includes and what are options you can buy to expand it, which we have this last one here, the 10 gig Ethernet card. But we're not ready to install that yet. We go back up to the top, you'll see under features, the sales pitch, all right? Says it's going to run up to 592 on the reads and 562 on the writes with the mechanical drives, which is below what 10 gig networking should deliver us. We should be able to, with 10 gig networking, see higher than 900, but the bottleneck may be the drives themselves. So if you look at like an ASUS Store, Flash Store 12 that has a 10 gig port using all NVMe, and I just heard the NAS beep, which indicates to me it's probably done. Now, when I mention the packages, there are some default packages that the NAS needs to run. I leave those alone, and if those have updates, I update them. I'm only referring to optional packages that I don't use. The required ones, you don't have a choice. All right, let's go back into the chat and see what you guys are saying here. Oh, wait a minute. We're already done. Welcome to DSM 7.2. Start. Device name. Let's call this server. That's how I'll find it. The administrator account. Now, I like to call the administrator account admin, but every hacker knows that. And Synology decided a few versions ago that you can't use the name admin. So I'll just use the name Carey. Password. Here, I'm going to put my password in. How do I want to do it? Oh, it says it's weak, but will it take it? Let's see what happens. Remember, I'm just setting this up for a video. I'm not going to keep it this way. So with it being in red, will it let me keep it? Let's see. Password strength. I have to have upper and lower case. So just by making one letter uppercase, we went from weak to medium. Is medium good enough? There's my RoboForm. Told you I love my RoboForm. All right, select, let's see, automatically install important, automatically install the latest. Let's just do the latest. Or you can just have it notify me and it's on you to do it. But people are very unreliable. In this case, I prefer automation. But nothing on backups for automation. Create a Synology account. No, I don't want to do that. Skip. Skip anyway. There are benefits to the Synology account for accessing your NAS while you're out of the building, but I don't have any need for that. Device analytics, this is just to report back anonymously statistics and errors that in the NAS may occur, so the technical team at Synology can be on top of things without you having to call them necessarily, and may be able to address problems before you have them that other people are having and haven't reported. The technical team can see all this data coming in and they're flooded with a certain kind of an error. They can update the DSM, send that update automatically, and then you never experience it. So if you want to do that, you can. I like how that is turned off by default. That's great. Normally it's the other way around. So I appreciate Synology doing that. Okay, with regards to sharing access outside of the building, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to say no thanks. Extended warranty, I'm going to dismiss that. Two-factor authentication, no thank you. Protect your account with adaptive multi-factor authentication. Don't want to secure my account. Yeah, but, yeah, whatever. Now we need to create a storage pool. So this, all we did is install this operating system. So we're going to hit create now, and it should walk us right through this initial setup process. Start to create storage pools and volumes. So we'll hit start. What kind of RAID do we want? SHR is Synology Hybrid RAID. That's what I want. You'll notice there's a Hybrid RAID 2. That's if you want a 2-drive fault tolerance, meaning 2 drives could fail. But it also means you're going to lose more of your capacity. Remember I told you we're going to lose 1 drive of capacity? If we go with 2-drive fault tolerance, we lose even more capacity. We could go with a basic RAID 5, but the Synology Hybrid RAID is an improvement on basic RAID, but you can choose that. What do we want to call our storage pool? I'm only going to create one, so the name doesn't matter. I hit next. Which drives do we want to use in the storage pool? We want to use all of them. We're going to create one big pool. Each drive shows 7.3 terabytes, which is 8 terabytes. I know this confuses people. They go, oh, you just lost 0.7 terabytes. No, I didn't. It's still there. It's the way that they calculate the space is different. There is gigabytes and gigabytes. Gigabytes versus gigabytes. They're 2 different reporting mechanisms, and it confuses the average user. They think, oh, after I formatted my drive, I lost some space. You didn't lose any space. They're reporting gigabytes versus gigabytes. It's very confusing and stupid. So it says our estimated capacity is 21.8 terabytes when we know it's 24, okay? So we didn't lose anything. It's the math is being done differently here. Don't let that throw you. Hit next. Total capacity is this. Yes, we want to use the whole thing. Volume description, we can skip. We just hit next. Oh, I have to maximum. We'll just hit the max. That's what I want. Now next. Now, do we want Butterfuss or BTRFS, or do we want ext4? ext4 is the old school Linux file system, which has been around for decades. The B-tree file system is far more modern, advanced, reliable, and less corruptible. When you're buying a Synology or any NAS, make sure it supports BTRFS. Because if you're buying a NAS that's ext4 only, you're either buying an old NAS or a budget NAS. And if you want your data integrity to be as good as possible, you want BTRFS. It is absolutely superior in all ways, from performance to reliability. And if you don't believe me, Google it. Next. Encrypting a volume, we don't need to encrypt. Next. Now it wants me to confirm what I've told it I want to do, right? This is just a summary. Are you sure this is what you want? Yep, hit apply, and it goes to work. All the data will be erased. Here we go again with that. Yes, of course. Now it's going to create a new storage pool. We're going to use every bit of data available as one big drive. With a NAS, you create a storage pool, then you create volumes. So I could break that storage pool up into partitions. They're just calling partitions volumes, okay? Same thing. But what I want to do is I want one big volume on one big storage pool. I just like to keep it simple. I hate multiple partitions because, I mean, unless I'm in a restroom, then I really like partitions. But when it comes to hard drives or storage space, you're just voluntarily limiting yourself. That one day you're going to hit that limit that you voluntarily set, and you're going to have to deal with it. Use folders. Stop using partitions. Use folders. Okay. Rant over for now. So right now, what's it doing? We've got health status, health monitor. We got all these quick tour stuff, right? If you're new to it, go through it. You can go to DSM help later if you want to go through that. Okay, I don't want to go through it, but it's there for new folks. Makes it easy, walks you through everything. And then, of course, we got to deal with configuring notifications and how to email me when there's a problem and what kind of problems and updates and drive fails, unexpected shutdowns and all of that I can be alerted to, and I can set that up however I want it. I like the resource monitor here, and it says it's optimizing in the background, and this is going to take a while. We're looking at certainly overnight, but we can use it in the meantime. We just want to leave it on. Don't turn it off. It'll have to start over again. And we don't have to wait for this. It used to be in the day you had to wait for this to finish before you could do anything else. But we've advanced on since then. So this will run in the background and we can continue to use it as though it's already done. So for our volume, let's take a look here. We need to create, this is so confusing, volume 1, storage pool 1, but I don't think we have a share yet. Create. Should be so this should be our pool, and we need to create a volume. Maybe it already created the volume for us. Maybe that just happened and I didn't realize it. We can schedule data scrubbing. This is recommended once a year. I usually do it once a month. Data scrubbing isn't like cleaning the trash. It's going through the data bit by bit to make sure nothing's corrupt. And if it is corrupt, by doing it this way, it can repair most corruptions before you even know it's corrupted. So I usually automate this. This is not a life or death thing, but I would enable it, put it on a schedule, and have it email me like once a month to tell me the name of the server and the task that was done and whether or not it was successful or not. You can set up a hot spare, which we don't have room for here. The SSD cache drive, if we put NVMe drives in, this is where we would configure them. And then global settings here, which again, these are individually set items depending on how you're using the NAS, what you want to automate, if you want to make speed limits so that you don't generate a lot of network traffic from one user just slamming on it and all the other users are being held up behind them. You can, well, I guess this is for the resync speed limits. So resyncing is is a form of synchronizing the data to another NAS or to another device. And you don't want that to be the thing that's taking all the resources. So while it's doing the synchronization and you're trying to use your NAS is slow as a dog. So you can say, okay, just let's limit the speed of if you're using rsync, let's limit a resync, let's limit the speed so it doesn't impact my usage of it while that's happening at the same time. Again, you can choose all this stuff. There's fast repair. You can turn that on or off. I don't know why you'd want it off, other than under fast repair, you're adding more resources and prioritizing the repair. Thereby, if you're using the NAS heavily, you may notice your NAS is slower because it's busy doing the repair in fast mode. If you put the repair in normal mode, you can continue to use the NAS and probably wouldn't likely notice any speed difference. So that's what all that's for. Now we can close this window when we get to the main desktop of our DSM. And one of the things I like to add here is our storage information. I wish it was defaulted here. The package center, the control panel, the file station, and help. I primarily only use the control panel. That's it. And I use storage. So where is storage? It's up here at this Windows looking key at the top. You click on that and you're going to see all of your desktop options. And I want the storage manager right here. What do I right click on it? Add to desktop. Now I don't have to keep going in here. Now, how do I get back to the desktop? Is there an X to close? Just click outside of any of the icons one time and it closes. Here's the storage manager. That's where we just were. I go in here quite often to look at the health status of the individual drives. You can see it tells me drives are healthy and what drives they are, in which bays they're in. Okay. Now, that's important to me. We have an X here. In the control panel, this is primarily where all the good stuff is. This is where you're going to set it up with your workgroup name, etc. We can look at update and restore for the individual NAS, and as well as check for latest updates, right? Under update and restore, we can say, it says your DSM version is up to date. Now, in theory, because it's automated, it should always say this. But if there's a beta you want to install, or for some reason you didn't get the update, you can always manually update it. We go back, we've got the shared folder. Here's the part I was missing. So if we've got our volume and our storage pool created, now we need to decide how we want to divvy that up. I just want one giant shared folder, and we'll divvy it up within folders in that folder. Think of it like a file cabinet. In a file cabinet, you can have folders, as many folders as you can fit in there, or as few as you want in real life using a file cabinet. This is a virtual file cabinet. We're calling the file cabinet a shared folder. So we're going to create the file cabinet, and we're going to call it public. I don't need a description, it's optional. And it's going to be located on volume 1 because that's the only volume we have. We want to enable the recycle bin, and we'll limit it. You know, all the defaults are good here. And click next. Again, we can turn on encryption, this kind of stuff. We're just going to go with the defaults and click next. And enable data checksum for advanced data integrity. I'm going to say yes, please. File compression, no, that will slow us down. There's a summary. This is what you want to do? Yep. Next. So even though it's still confirming our storage pool in the background, that's going to take a while, we can continue to use the NAS as though that has completed, sort of assuming everything's going to be okay. Now, who's going to be able to use this shared folder I just made? I want admin to have read and write access. Carey, that's me. I want him to have read and write access. And guest, I want guest to have read and write access, and hit apply. But by default, for security reasons, the guest account is disabled. So we have to go under user and group. You see how it shows guest is deactivated? There's a way. Guest account, deactivate this account. uncheck that box and hit save. The guest account means by using my network, I can log into the share without a name and password. This is what all my small businesses use because it's going to get real tiring to have to keep re-entering your name and password. Now, if we had different departments, like let's say we had payroll, we don't want employees to see the payroll, right? So we would create a folder or a volume. We would create a folder. We would encrypt that folder with a password and only give the password to the HR people. So essentially, every viewer could see the folder, but if they tried to click on it, they would need to, say the magic word or you can't come in. And that way we don't have to create all these different volumes and partitions. This is so simple. But none of my customers do that. Essentially, every file on the NAS is available to every employee in the building. And if they want to work from home, they remote into their desktop at work. And they use the software on the desktop at work, and they can access the NAS as though they were sitting at the desktop at work. We don't give them the software to use at home, and they don't get any files at home. All the files stay on the computers inside the office, and they're remoting when they want to remote to the computer inside the office and use that computer from home. That's how we keep everything simple and not complicated. Now, in theory, I should be able to access this 24 terabyte drive we've created. How would we do that? We'll bring up our yellow folder down here, and we're going to go to, well, heck, you know what I should be able to do is, well, we'll try it one of two ways. We'll go to network, which is somewhere in here, and it should pull up the Synology. So that's my Galaxy book. There's server. That's what we named the NAS. Double click it. It shows the public share we created. Double click it. There's our recycle bin. We're up and running. So as far as the rest of this, we can close this background window. This is the only window I'm interested in. If I want to, I can map a network drive. And the way we do that is we would go to this PC, 3 dots, map a network drive. We'll choose letter Z to be our drive letter. We'll browse for it. There's server. Give it a second. There's public. Click OK and make sure the box is checked to reconnect us at login. No password or login information is required. And now you'll see our desktop has this new drive letter Z. So as long as we're on the network, we can double click and it's just like having the drive inside of the computer. And if I take any of my video files and I want to copy them over, we can certainly do that. If I go to my video backup drive, we have all of these videos of past broadcasts, right? And they're all pretty large. If we come over here to the right, we're looking at size. So like this first one, well, this one's 65 gigs. Is that right? It's massive. Yeah, it's almost 5 hours of video. We'll right click on that and choose copy. And I'll go to my Z drive, right click and choose paste, or I can create a new folder, right? Instead of partitions, I can say YouTube videos. Now remember, we're at a 1 gig networking speed. So I hit paste and take a look at my average speed. That's what you can expect on 1 gig networking. This has no impact on my internet speed. This is just the speed of my internal network. So for most people, it won't affect you. But a file of that size says it's going to take nearly 10 minutes to copy over. So what do I do for those 10 minutes? Well, I can still continue to use my computer. Just let that run in the background. It'll finish when it finishes. Or I can get up out of my chair, go have something to eat, watch a little TV, whatever. The point is, you don't have to sit here and stare at this. When we go to 10 gigs, we should see this speed number go up to around 900, except we might find a limiter on the NAS itself. According to the website, it showed 562. So divide this time by 5, and it would take 2 minutes instead of 10 minutes. Now, I'm only copying one of these files a day, but imagine if I wanted to copy that whole drive, that entire video backup drive I just took this one file from. Imagine if I took all the files and said, copy those over to the NAS. Then I'd have a duplicate backup. Think how much time that would take. Now, if that were me, regardless if I was on a 10 gig or a 1 gig or a 2.5 gig network, that's probably something I would do late at night just before I go to bed. And when I wake up in the morning, it should be done. It might have been done after 3 or 4 hours, and I'll be snoring in REM sleep, and it'll sit and wait patiently for me until I get to it. You don't have to sit and stare at it. Whoops, did I cancel it? Oh, it occurs to me that the screen capture mode that I'm showing you these videos on is strictly on the browser. It's not on the file explorer. And that's my mistake. So the window capture mode in OBS is a little tricky because it wants to know individual windows you want to capture. So I went from the browser to my local Explorer windows and did not configure OBS to show those to you. That's my bad. Let me take a look here. See if I can capture just everything. How about just the whole screen? So OBS is currently only, at least this option I'm looking on, only captures windows, not the whole full screen. So I might be on the wrong thing. So I show you this window here. See, it's not showing you the whole desktop. It's only showing you the open window, which is this Explorer window. And what I was trying to show earlier is we've added this drive letter Z right here. This is the NAS. It shows there's over 20 terabytes free. And we are copying, or we were copying a file. And what I did is I went to my video backup drive, which is local. I'll take this first file, right click and choose copy. See, it's not showing you what I'm doing. This is frustrating. There's probably another option in OBS where I can show this to you. But these files, these are all video backups, and some of them are quite large. So we take this one, I right click, and you're not going to see the dialog, but I hit copy. And then I go over here to my NAS drive, and it acts like it's an internal drive. I created a folder called YouTube videos. I didn't have to, but just for the sake of demonstrating why you no longer need partitions, double click, it's empty, right click, again, you won't see the right click menu. I hit paste, and now you don't see the copying that's taking place. Oh, that's maddening. I think the reasoning is because I am in what's called window capture mode, not in screen capture mode. So I think there's if I can add a source, let's see if there's a screen capture. Window capture, audio capture, display capture. How about that? Let's try that. Yikes. Oh man, that's a mess. All right, well, we're gonna do this anyway. This is why I don't use this. It starts getting in a video loop. But let's turn off camera 1 to get rid of the video. Well, no, I guess I just need to go over here. I can't monitor OBS without creating that mess. So this is, again, the browser that we had open. And then going down to our file explorer, now you can see the copy take. You should be able to see that now. And you can see the speed at which this file is moving. It's a very large file, and the estimated time it's going to take. Now, we can continue to use the computer. Obviously, this is the computer we're streaming from, so we're still streaming. We don't do one thing at a time. We multitask. Just minimize that and go about your day. It'll be done when it's done. But if we can speed up our network, if we can put a 10 gig card in the Synology and a 10 gig card in the streamer and hook it into a 10 gig switch, then any data we're transferring between the NAS and the streamer, anything plugged into the 10 gig switch that is 10 gig on each side also can run at up to 10 gig in speed versus the 1 gig we're seeing. So essentially, depending on how important this is a problem that money fixes. Now there's also 25 gig networking and above, but that's so expensive. most home users would never even consider it, and likely overkill unless you're running a pretty serious business out of your home. You have 15 employees doing intense, I don't know, video rendering or something that would require that kind of bandwidth. But when you have 1,000 employees, 25 gigs is not enough. Just because it's available doesn't mean you should put it in your house. Now, 10 gig used to be super expensive, and to some extent it still is, but it's like the price 1 gig was when it first came out. So I consider it affordable. Now, if you're not moving big files on a regular basis, this is likely a waste of money for you. Maybe it's just a fun experiment. But if we go to a 2.5 gig network, we'll see instead of this average of 110 megabytes per second, we'll see around 230, 240. So there is a 5 gig network, but I've never seen a 5 gig switch. Amazon sells like 2 5 gig cards. But if you want a 10 gig add-in card for your computer, there's many to choose from. 5 gig switch, I've never seen. But if you get a 10 gig switch, it will work at 5 gigs, and it will work at 2.5, and it will work at 1, all simultaneously. So how fast your data transfer will go is determined upon which is the slowest network card on the receiving end. Mike's Unboxing Review says, Gigabit Ethernet, ugh. I use 2.5 gig on the DS420 Plus, which is a good balance of cost to performance with the cost of a cheap Realtek 2.5 gig USB to Ethernet adapter. I would be interested in what 2.5 gig Ethernet adapter you are using that's compatible with the Synology, because I ran through that experience and every one of them was unreliable. So it turned out the 1 gig was faster because it never crashed. It's tortoise in the hare. Zvi says, Carey, please note the NAS is not yet finished preparing the disk. This also affects the speed. This is true. However, the best case scenario that I see on a wired gigabit network, which I have at Studio A, is around 129 megabytes per second. So if this is slower, it's not slower by much. But of course, if multiple people were trying to use this at the same time, everybody's going to be a little bit slower. But yes, point well made. Now, the Synology NAS only has 1 gig networking built in, where all the competitors are all using 2.5. But if you don't have a 2.5 gig switch or a 2.5 gig compatible router, you're only going to run at the speed of the router. And in most cases, your internet speed will remain the same regardless. This is just for internal file transfer purposes only. Whether or not that applies to you, I'm just here to introduce the product, explain to you why it exists and who it's for. I don't know if it's for you or not. Maybe your eyes have lit up with ideas, or maybe you're bored to tears. I don't know. It can't please everyone. All right, I'm going to go back to my OBS here, so be ready for the video to get all video feedbacky. And we'll go back over to camera 1. Okay, right there. There I am. That wasn't confusing at all. Thank you for letting me know. I'm sorry I went that far without looking at the chat and realizing you guys couldn't see. One of the ways I avoid this whole scenario is you'll see me grab one of the mini PCs, and I'll use the mini PC and do a full screen capture of that so that you don't have to see me switching through OBS. Some of you might like seeing that. Most of you probably find it annoying. But some of you are like, oh, that's how he does that. So yeah, I was on the fence. I was about to set up a mini PC, and then I thought, yeah, just run it off the streamer, you know. Now I remembered that's why you don't run it off the streamer. I forgot. So I apologize for that, because those were really good steps, and I'm sorry you didn't see them. But we'll get a chance to do this again and again, as many times as we need. It's very simple to do. And once we've configured it, if we leave it alone, we now have a 24 terabyte Z drive, and we can attach it to every computer in the building, and everybody can share it as though it were installed in their computer. Think of what that can do for you. It's not a backup. It's a storage locker that everybody on the network, wired or wirelessly, can access. Now, if you have a guest come over and you don't want the guest to access your files, that's what the guest network is for. It isolates the guest away from your network. They can't print to your printers. They can't see your files. It's hack proof. You can take all your IoT, your Internet of Things devices, cameras, thermostats, garage door openers, put it all on the guest network. Because if they say the manufacturer of that device has potentially got an exploit that a hacker can use that to get into your network, they won't go anywhere on the guest network. Everybody's in their own little isolation chamber. They cannot see each other on the guest network, and they can't see anybody on the non-guest network. Use the guest network. Now, the guest network is for wireless clients only. As far as I know, there's no such thing as a wired guest. I mean, I've had a few guests that were wired, but that's a different situation. We're just a little past our 2-hour mark, and I think I got through what I wanted to get through today. On part 2 of this video, we're going to install the 10 gig card in the NAS. If I have room in here, I'll install the 10 gig card in here. Otherwise, I'll put one of our builds up here because I think I filled all the slots on this. Oh no, I took the video card out, so we can do it. We'll put the 10 gig card in here in the streamer, and then we'll run the network cable from the switch. This is our switch. And we'll run the network cable from the NAS to the switch, from the streamer to the switch, and then from the switch to the router. So everything going to the router slows down to 2.5 gig, but anything communicating itself in these plugs that has 10 gig on the other side, they will communicate at the speed slowest of any of the plugs. So if I leave that at 2.5 gig and I only plug the switch in, it's only going to communicate with that computer at 2.5 gig. It can't go any faster than 2.5 gig. If I put a 10 gig in there and connect it directly to the 2.5 gig router, it can only communicate at 2.5 gig. But if I put a 10 gig in there and a 10 gig in here and connect it to a 10 gig switch, then they can communicate with each other at 10 gig. And then when the switch is connected to the router, they still have internet access where speed doesn't matter. And that link between the switch and the router will be 2.5 gig. And the link between the router and the modem will be at, whatever your internet provider modem supports. And then the speed from the modem to your internet service provider is dictated by the financial monthly payment you're making to your provider. And if you want it to go faster, you give your provider more money, assuming you live in an area where there are higher tiers available. And if you think you've got the highest tier available, it changes rapidly. So my recommendation is, if you want faster speeds and you haven't asked in the last 6 or 12 months or more, call your service provider, see if it's changed. It changes rapidly, and you may not be aware a faster service has been available and you just weren't told. But you will have to pay for that. Let me jump back over to, what do we got here? Oh, it signed us out of the server because it's idling. It's fine. Dustin Fuller with a $2 super chat. Thank you, Dustin. Andy Archer contributes 20 pounds. Right on. Cheers, Andy. Thank you so much. He says, nice stream, Carey. There's our friend Gregory Howard with a $10 super chat. Says hello, Carey, Mara, and all of the chat. Peter joining us from Amsterdam in the Netherlands, I believe. €1. Thank you, Peter. As always, we appreciate your contribution. Thanks again to Rick Lakes, Shop Persian Rugs, David Graham, Mark Gaines, Steve Dodd, Robert Katjna, Roy Starman, Hector Aviles with 1999. I think I missed your contribution. My apologies, Hector. He says, hello, Carey and Ms. Mara and everyone in the community. Carey, here's to more of your educating us on new technologies. Thank you very much. Perusian Kalustian with a $2 super chat. Of course, our friend Buster joining us from Scotland with 10 pounds contributed. Jose Lopez with $2 contributed. And our friend Alan Lindas here in Arizona with $7.77. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel so that we don't have to go to sponsors and read scripts and produce what they tell us to produce. I don't want to do that. I don't want to make commercials. And checking the email here one more time. Let's talk about, hold on, I want to say thank you once again to any contributors in Amazon gift cards. And Mike and Kath, again, thank you guys so much. Go check out Mike's unboxing. Am I getting the title right? And reviews. We'll have to put a link, Mara, to Mike's channel so people can check it out. I think if you like my content, you'll like his. Might like his better. And then Charles Purdy, thank you for the Amazon gift card. And of course, our friend Buster with a very, very generous Amazon gift card. You guys rock. All right. Couple of things to know about the 923 Plus and how it's different from, if you just look at these Synology 4-bay NASs, they all look alike. They have the same housing, but they've got different prices and they have different features. And you got to dig a little deeper to understand if that's worth it to you. If those are features that are worth paying for or not, depending on how you plan on using the NAS. So for example, bring up my notes here. The hard drives we're using, these are Synology branded hard drives that are made specifically for NAS use and are certified. Some businesses must use certified drives. You don't have to use Synology hard drives. But if you choose to, know that they were designed, and I'm going to read Synology's description, which is to deliver consistent performance and reliability with always-on NAS environments. Synology hard drives undergo extensive testing to ensure they meet our stringent standards for performance and durability. Yes, you can use other drives. You should always be using NAS drives. I only use NAS drives either from Synology, Western Digital, or Seagate. When companies require certified drives, Synology is really the only smart choice. As I showed in the DSM software, the DiskStation Manager software, I'll get those words out. Automatic firmware updates is very important for security. You can't rely on people to check this stuff, okay? So we checked the box. You saw earlier that we allow the machine to auto update, not just important updates. I want all updates. The default is just the important ones. I want all of them. If they created the update, they created it for a reason. I don't need to know what the reason is. I'm proactive rather than reactive. So give me all the updates, and then I will turn notifications on and set my email address up. Setting it up with Gmail is super easy. And then it will send me an email every time there's a firmware update and whether or not it was successful in applying it. And I can tell it to do it at 2 or 3 in the morning when it's not going to interfere with any business productivity. And I turn on email notifications so I'm made aware, hey, there's a new firmware update, and if you don't do anything about it in the next 10 minutes, we're going to install it. So usually when I wake up in the morning, I get 2 emails when this happens. New firmware is available. It's going to install in 10 minutes unless you interrupt it. And of course, I'm in Snoozeville. The next email is firmware update's been applied. The unit's been restarted. Everything's successful. I'd have to lift a finger. Great. The reason those firmware updates are so important is just do a little research online with Google about breaches into the NAS. QNAP was targeted. Synology, I believe, was targeted. TerraMaster was targeted. I forget the name of the virus. But because the unit's on and connected to the internet, if an exploit is found, you don't have to do anything. Just the fact that the NAS is on and connected to the internet, that's all it takes for a hacker to get into it, unless the exploit is closed. And the exploit is closed via a firmware update. If you don't update the firmware, you're vulnerable. It's just a matter of time. They can encrypt the entire NAS. Say, pay us money or we throw away the key within 72 hours. What are you going to do? Pay the money? Now, if you had a backup, you could just reset everything and restore your backup. But regardless, if you keep your firmware up to date at all times, you should not be a victim of that ever happening. And like QNAP didn't set it to auto by default, and most users didn't know any better. So they were running old firmware for a long, long time, and they were the victims. People like me that would go and check it every month, I do that on my router too. Do you update your router's firmware? You should. Unless you're renting a cable modem router from your internet service provider, then they take care of it. The warranty, once again, a 3-year warranty. On all of the Plus series NASs, remember I said that little Plus adds features. Well, one of those features is an extended warranty, so 3 years. With regards to those Synology hard drives, once again, they are made specifically for Synology NASs. So if you're wondering, well, how do they work together? Guaranteed. If you buy Seagate or Western Digital, especially if it's the latest drive they just came out with, Synology may not have updated the software to recognize it. It'll say, I don't know what this drive is you plugged in. It may not be compatible. You get a warning. Doesn't mean the drive won't work. It just means you're on the bleeding edge and you're ahead of them. But if you always buy the drives from Synology, obviously Synology verifies them and updates their software to recognize their own stuff. So there's a certain peace of mind in matching. You know, do you have a warranty from Western Digital or Seagate and then a different warranty on the NAS? Or would you rather have everything under one company so there's only one phone number to call if there's a problem? So there's advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantage is usually the price, but the advantage is the peace of mind and the ease with which you can get support from one company versus having to call, you know, you got a failed hard drive and your hard drive is from Western Digital or Seagate. That has nothing to do with Synology. But if you have a Synology drive and a Synology NAS and the drive fails, you're still going to reach out to Synology, whether it's a NAS problem or a hard drive problem. So there is value in that. Looking at the specifications, the CPU in this is an AMD Ryzen R1600. It's got 4 gigs of RAM. This is how it comes empty with no disks. About $600 as of middle of August 2024. The drives are hot swappable, the hard drives, not the NVMe's. You got 2 1 gig LAN ports, which I suppose we could turn on SMB multi-channel, SMB3, and use both of those 1 gig ports together as a 2 gig port without any further configuration. That's still not a single 2.5 gig, but you could do it. Then we've got the upgrade option. Not all Synology NASs, only a few, have the option for the 10 gigabit add-in card that we're going to do on part 2. Then you've got all the packages and the utilities and the manuals, the support. If you go to Synology's website and just look at the support available for these NASs, it is comprehensive with video tutorials, accessories, specifications, manuals, firmware updates, everything you could ever want. Synology does a great job at providing everything you will need for your NAS. They don't make you hunt for it. A very well put together website. I wish every company did it the way Synology does. Now, when it comes to the switch we're going to use and the drive we're going to use, those are going to be made by TP-Link and not Synology. And if you want more information on Synology hard drives, they have the regular Plus series drives and their enterprise level drives. Enterprise meaning big corporations, where they're going to get slammed on constantly, just abused. So they have a special drive designed for abuse, that level of abuse. All of those links are in our video notes below. And you know what pairs well with the Synology Acronis? It's super easy to use Acronis to restore and backup images to a NAS. You can also use the built-in software Synology has. I'm just not quite sure how you do your restore without some kind of a rescue disk. I don't know how that works. What I like about Acronis is, let's say your computer hard drive dies. Everything's gone. You have to replace the drive. So you get the drive replaced, whether it's in warranty or out. It happens. One way or another, you got to replace the drive. So you get a brand new drive. It has nothing on it. It's completely empty. Not a format, not a partition. But you've got an image made and it's on the NAS. How do you take a computer with no operating system and load up the restore software needed to copy your image back down? And so with Acronis, and I can't speak for the package here, I don't know, maybe if Mike's watching, he can tell us. You make a rescue bootable USB stick and you boot your computer to the USB stick, which loads a small, either Windows pre-installation environment or Linux-based operating system with the Acronis software coming up automatically. You choose restore, you browse your network to your NAS, you find your folder with your Acronis image, you click it, it restores over the network. When it's done, you shut your computer down, unplug the flash drive, turn your computer back on, it goes right back in time to working just like it did when you made the backup. So if you're making image backups or PC backup images onto your NAS using the NAS package software, my question is, how do you restore it without getting back to the NAS? You'd have to reinstall Windows and network card drivers just to get, I mean, there must be a way. Let's see what Mike says. Mike says they do have a USB restore system just like Acronis. Well, there you go. I did not know. Here's the thing, and this is an important lesson, not only for myself, but for all of you. When we learn things in technology and we hold on to them tightly because they work, my justification is I'm going to use what I know works because I'm trying to get as much done as possible. I don't have any employees. I have to do it or it doesn't get done. If it's doing the job and I'm familiar with it and I can get in and out and I can predict how much time it's going to take, I have no reason to look for a replacement. I'm very happy with that solution. But then someone comes along and says, hey, Carey, did you know if your customers have Synology NAS, you don't have to do it that way. You can use the package here and do it this way. Okay, but that doesn't affect all my customers. With Acronis, I can do the same regardless if my customers have a NAS or not. So does that mean I learn a whole different process just for the customers with the NAS because it's perhaps more convenient, maybe it's more efficient? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do something differently for this customer than I do for that customer when it comes to things as important as backups. And then I have to remember, how do I need a restore disk for Acronis. I need a restore disk for Synology. I need synchronization software. I'm a keep it simple guy. Even if it means I might be doing things that are less efficient, that's quite possible. It's quite possible Mike's suggestion would be more efficient for me. And if I could apply it to all of my customers I do backups for, I would adopt it. But to only, and some of my customers have QNAP NASs, which likely have some sort of similar but different. And I've got to learn that software too. I don't have the bandwidth in my head for that. So unless Acronis fails me, which it hasn't done in all the years since I've been using it, I have no desire to look for another solution. But I appreciate Mike brought it up because you may not have a solution at all. So you're starting at right at ground zero there, and you can decide, am I just backing up my stuff, not for customers, just for me and only me? Then it's worth investing in understanding all the packages that are available. But if you're supporting a bunch of different customers, some of them have NASs, and the NASs they have are all different. One's got an ASUS store, one's got a QNAP, one's a couple got Synologies. Are you going to know all of those NASs and all of their packages? Because I can't. So again, I try to keep it simple in order to scale. So Mike's not wrong. And I've always known there's backup solutions with Synologies. I know you can back up one Synology over the internet to another Synology. Like let's say I tell the boss, you buy the same Synology. It doesn't have to be the same, but to keep it simple, buy the same Synology. Let's put the same drives in it. Let's configure it. Let's get it into your house. Assuming he has the bandwidth at his house and the bandwidth at his office, we can tell the Synology at the office to update at night, once a week, once a month, once every day, and synchronize all the data on the Synology at the office to the Synology at the house, consuming the bandwidth. But there are generally bandwidth limitations with regards to how much data you can transfer before the cable company or the internet service provider charges you. So here we have Cox Cable, and you get 1.25 terabytes of data per month. It doesn't matter if your connection's slow or fast. If it's fast, it just means you can consume 1.25 faster. Then it's $50 after that for every, I don't know. Or you can pay an extra $50 a month on top of your bill for unlimited bandwidth. They find a way to get you. So when you're running a business, these are small amounts of money, but it is a risk you run into. If something were to happen, then the NAS has a ton of data and it's all automated and no one's paying attention. And at the end of the month, the owner you get a call from the owner going, we need to talk. I just got a $1,000 bill from my internet service provider. What did you do? I don't know. I set it to automatic, right? And then the thing got flooded and it sent all that data over the network, consuming not only the bandwidth at the office, but the bandwidth at the house, raising those two bills. That's why you have to audit it and maintain it. And that's why I still prefer to do it by hand or to look at it remotely and do what I can remotely based on how much the customer wants to pay, once a week, once a month, whatever frequency the customer wants, understanding cost versus risk. It's not my decision. It's the customer's decision. I just help to explain why, and then the customer using that information ideally can make the best decision with having the right expectations in case of emergency. So, not that you asked, but I justify the heck out of everything I do. And I will tell you the reasoning behind why I do it. I don't do it because it's a ritual. Well, we always do this. No, I have to know why. And as long as it works, even if it's not efficient, if I can estimate the amount of time it'll take, and it always works, I have no reason to look for another solution. That's solved, and I move on to the next thing. Mike says, yeah, I think you really enjoy using Active Backup for business. It does a lot of very cool things, including restore, cold boot restore, web page individual file restore, file deduplication. So all of that Acronis does. And again, I don't back up the PCs. I don't see any reason to when they're all the same. But I get what you're saying. And in the right scenario, I definitely can see where that would be beneficial. Bill says he's having an Acronis problem. I missed what he said here. Let's go up a little bit. Acronis's last update name change seems like it's working right. Hold on. There's got to be something before that. How do you get to the guest network with your provider Wi-Fi? That's in your router settings. You log into your router or your gateway. Trevor Dunn said you could do a speed test on the NAS and then add the SSD cache and test again. It won't make any difference. In order for an SSD cache to be beneficial, you have to move the file more than once. So when we did the speed test, we copied from the streamer to the NAS. Okay, so if there was an SSD cache, it could cache that file. It could, it might not. Then we need to copy it back over. And the SSD cache may say, hey, you're accessing this file more than once. Let me put it in the cache, it'll go faster. But we won't go any faster than our network. Our network is still a 1 gig network. Cache isn't really going to help us. But let's say, for example, I have a bunch of Word or Excel documents, PDF files, smaller files. That's where the cache comes in handy. These large video files I've got that are 16 gigs and they're massive, SSD cache is not going to help us. So again, one size does not fit all. For me, all an SSD cache would do for me is cause me to have less money in my wallet. It would offer me zero benefit. I do have some clients that an SSD cache might speed things up, but that assumes they're not on a 1 gig or wireless network that will limit the speed regardless. But if you have multiple people accessing the NAS at the same time, let's say you've got an office with 15 employees and you're on a NAS. And let's say all 15 employees want to access some document off the NAS, a tiny little file. At the same time, that SSD cache will make a massive difference in the perception of speed. Your environment will dictate whether or not having that SSD cache is beneficial. You could have a car with a turbocharger, but if you only drive the car no more than 30 miles an hour, the turbocharger will never activate and there's no point in having it. You're paying extra on the insurance, you're paying extra for the turbo, you're losing potential gas mileage, and you'll likely, if you're not using it, when you do go to use it, it may not work if it hasn't been used in years, because you never push the gas pedal down far enough or raise the RPMs high enough to kick that turbo on. Therefore, why do you have it? In my case, the SSD cache would be a waste of money because I'm moving very large files and it's just me. And when we get to Studio C, it'll be Mara and I, and it's unlikely we will be using it at the same time unless one of us is streaming content from the NAS onto a television, while another one of us is copying or moving content while doing video work. And even then, that's nothing. Two people sharing a NAS like this, nothing. So the SSD cache would not help us. Imagine if you had an SSD cache for streaming Netflix. Is your movie going to play any faster? Is your 2-hour movie now an hour and a half? If you're watching a movie, you're watching it at the speed you're consuming it. The SSD won't help you there, the cache. So I can't emphasize enough. Please don't assume an SSD cache is going to benefit you. It might not. Okay. Cache is tricky. It's very tricky. Find me in Hawaii with $4.99 in Super Chat. Thank you, Ken. Thank you to Mike over at Mike's Unboxing, Reviews, and How-Tos. Again, if you like my channel, check out his channel. I think you'll like his content too. And thanks to all of the members for making this video possible. Thanks to Synology for sending us the unit. There will be a part 2. We're not done yet. I apologize again that you guys I didn't get the screen captured during mapping the drive. And if we get requests, let me know in the comments. If you want me to do that again, I'll reset this and we'll do it again before we go any further. The downside of live video, okay? If this was a recorded video and I realized that I could go back, edit it, and then you guys could wait 3 weeks before you ever see any content. So this is a side effect of live. Thanks to Mara, doing all our administrative work there in the background. And thank you. We opened the chat room up to everybody today to see if people would behave. Because of improper behavior and lack of respect, we closed it to members only. We're starting to open it up again. And if it starts to get out of hand, we'll close it back down to members only again. So you guys will decide the future of chatting with me while I'm live, whether or not you have to be a member, right? That's in your hands, not in my hands. So I appreciate your consideration and courtesy when we're live. And more importantly, being nice, being friendly, being supportive. If you can't be friendly, say nothing. And if you can't not say nothing, please don't join our chat room and ruin it for everybody else. Our friends at Acronis offer 30% off to all you guys if you want to buy any Acronis product. Coupon code is in the video notes below, and that's good till the end of the year. Our friends at RoboForm, if you don't know what that is, it's a password manager. And both Acronis and RoboForm, we've had as guests on the show doing over an hour going through the product, how to use it, what it's for, and then you figuring out how have I ever lived without these products. Ignorance is bliss. 30% off RoboForm for new clients only. And finally, our friends over at VIP CDK Deals. They're where I get all of my Windows license and Office keys legally and about 90% less than what Microsoft's MSRP is. Everything is guaranteed. Everything has support. There's no risk, zero risk. If a mistake is made or there's a problem with Acronis, with RoboForm, or with VIP CDK Deals, reach out. They all have amazing support. Reach out to their support. Their support, once made aware of a problem, they will fix it. If they don't fix it, which almost never happens, you reach out to me directly. What other content creator stands behind third-party products like that? That's why I'm so finicky who I will allow to promote here, because it's a reflection on me and my business. So if you have any negative results and their customer service doesn't make it right, the buck stops with me. You reach out to me directly, tell me the story, we'll make it right. There's no risk, zero risk. And RoboForm has a free trial. Acronis has a free trial. And Windows and Office you acquire from Microsoft. It's only the key that you're paying for at VIP CDK deals. And those products have free trials, so you can install them without the key. You can use them for free for a while. All right. I don't know how else I can tell you. You have confidence that I don't know any other content creator that does this unless it's their own merch. This isn't my merch. These are actual companies I use in my real business for my customers that are a reflection upon the quality of work I do. So everything's got to be on the up and up, and it's got to be competitive, or I don't have a business. Peter BZ with a €1 contribution there at the end. Gregory Howard wants to know, does this case have cables in the rear? An Antec C8. Well, that just made a complete turn from our discussion. Hey, Gregory, why don't you email us and we can look that up for you. Or when we do members only videos, that's another great time to kind of steer the subject. I am trying to keep it on Synology for today. They've been very generous to send us their product. So we want to dedicate today's video for them. And then, of course, on part 2, will also be all about Synology. And anything off topic, we can either deal with in members only if you're a member, or you can email us. The email address is found on the About side of the YouTube channel. And we're certainly happy to answer any questions you have. David wants to know how Mitch is doing. Just went to dinner with Mitch last night. He's doing great. Everything's good. Eric wants to know my preferred browser. I'm a YouTube content creator. I think you know the answer. YouTube is owned by Google. Chrome is owned by Google. So YouTube works best in what browser? Google. So it's not really I woke up one day and decided I wanted Chrome. I kind of have to use it. I'm definitely not a fan of Firefox or Thunderbird for email. I don't like those at all. And I don't really care for Microsoft Edge, but it's that initial startup screen I hate. Once you get past all the questions, it's okay. So Chrome's less annoying than Edge. Hey, there's Mitch Morrison in the chat. Hey, Mara, can we turn Mitch blue? Mitch says, I'm going to South America at the end of October. He's the travel man. I go out to my driveway around the end of October. That's how often I leave the house. That's how far I go, to the mailbox. So I will live primarily vicariously through Mitch's travels. Jose Lopez contributes $1. Thank you, Jose. That'll wrap it up for me for today. We've run a little long as usual, but if you have any questions about the unit, leave it in the comments below the video. And if you have other questions that are off topic, feel free to email us. And again, the email address is found in the About section on the YouTube channel itself. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all of your support and contributions. Thank you especially to the members. Thank you for the general public for being courteous in the chat room. It's very much appreciated. Thanks again to Mara and Synology. Am I missing anybody? It's all about gratitude. You guys are amazing. We have the best community. Maybe not the best videos, but we definitely have the best community online. Thank you for being a part of it. I'll see you all again very, very soon. We always do members only videos on Mondays at 1 o'clock Pacific time. So if you're green, if you're a supporting member, that content is available only to members. And I look forward to every Monday because it's a smaller crowd. It's a little less chaotic. And I know all the people there have sacrificed, as I sacrificed, to make this channel happen. And that's asking a lot from complete strangers in the internet. That's freaking amazing. Thank you so much. I'll see you all very, very soon. And until next time, bye for now.